start the first session with Rowan. Rowan is a responsible denim consultant with more than 70 years of experience in menswear design across several brands. Rowan has always pushed the boundaries of design for a better product, and today he will share his insight on how to design better. So again, just a quick rules as usual. You can type in your Q&A in the Q&A chat box, and we'll be delighted to answer it at the end of each session. We'll have 5 minutes for discussing the questions. This session will be in English. The other ones will be in French, as we are on the Transformer Edit French edition. But as Rowan doesn't want to speak French, we'll do it in English. Rowan, à toi.
I can give it a go if you want. No. Bonjour to je vais parler de denim. This is as much as I try. Okay, great. Shall I start sharing?
Yep.
Okay, great. Give me a shout. Can you see it okay?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for inviting me to do this as well. It's a great pleasure of mine. Okay, today I'd like to talk about research, but I'd like to look at the 3 areas of past, present, and future, and why you need to look at all 3 and not just focus on what was coming or what's been in the past. Here's a quick outline what I'm going to be covering, a bit on the background, who am I, into research and the key areas. Also within these areas, I want to focus on design, fabric, and washing, and then a bit of future thinking and some resources I'd like to give you at the end of my talk. So hello, I'm Rowan Hunt. I'm a responsible denim specialist. I've been running my own consultancy for the last 3 years, working with mills, vendors, washing machine companies, all these different things that inspire me and I love doing. Before then, I worked in brands, mainly in the UK, Debenhams Next, as you can see on screen. So that's a bit overview about me. So my journey in this research is my Instagram, really. Denim Research, I set up as an Instagram account to just put all my images, everything I loved, everything I saw on traveling, anything I wanted to document so I could look back into. So, 3D design, the journey on this, that we're doing in Denim Research, investing time and money into it and what the future might be. Here, like fibres, looking at the new innovations in hollow cotton fibres and what we can do. Even the washing of what I'm doing day to day, I'm putting on there so I can refresh biodegradability there and then fibers. But I just put everything on there. So when I want to go back and just relook and remember, I've got my full feed there on what's been going on. So it's a never ending journey. Every day you're researching and learning more and more. So here's the key 3 areas I like to focus on. So the past, a bit about where it come from, design, the fabric, even things here where they're finding old jeans from the 1800s found in gold mines still today. So we can learn a lot from this about the wash, the pattern, the fabrics and everything. Present day, where we are, I don't need to talk about trends too much, but the things that we've got to hand today and what we need to think about when we're designing for the future, to be honest. And a bit about the future, where the future could be going, what are the good tools we got to see coming and what can we see the potential to grow. So within here, I'd like to look in design, washing and fabric, as I mentioned, and deep dive back into the past and the present and the future of each one of these categories. So if you can keep up with me, I'll start with design. So here's a bit about where the denim started. So as we know, most of denim, the gold mine is when people really knew about it. Back then, the jeans were quite thin, not as heavy duty as we've got today. So they needed things to reinforce them. And this is where the patent come from in 1873 from Jacob Davis and Levi Strauss. But around that time, a lot of other people were doing denim, but they couldn't use the rivets. So then they had to think outside the box. And these great images, what I just got it from Mosin, are ways they got around it, how they did, multi stitches to reinforce it, or, put it into the waistband to reinforce it so it doesn't rip. So it's really good demonstration of how you can think outside the box and still deliver the same end use, but in a different way. So I say approach history for inspiration on the future. So present day. So it's a commodity, the jean, but what makes it different? So here's some catwalk images. Here we can see a bit of inspiration from the carpenter jean, but more kind of style up in today. Utility is, a flavor from the military styles, but, doing it in a cooler style going forward. And then things like upcycle. Upcycle has become a trend because it's a need. It's a need for us to think about our future, think about how we can use waste in a different way. But I think the most important thing is here, where we need to think about what happens at the end. We don't want the end to come, but eventually it's going to come. So we want to repurpose, reuse, recycle as much as we can. But at the end, we got to make sure we're responsible in our choices. So here is a biodegradability test I did on 100% cotton and stretch denim. And this is what was left after a year. So there's polyester left. There's some cotton which will disappear, but we need to really think about how we design things going forward for the end of life, or to get it back into the circle. Okay, a bit about the future. So looking at the future, for me, things like zero waste, this great illustration from Danielle Decode, really beautiful, the design, the layout, but also she's used everything, every piece of fabric. So if we can do zero waste, then we're not wasting anything of the fabric. Even like, how can we sample in 3D before we go into it? And then we can make our responsible washing choices after that. But at least then we're not making multiple samples to get to where we want to be. And then, yeah, waste, as I mentioned, waste as an inspiration. So this is a beautiful gene made up from multiple genes, but it's beautiful the way it's put together. They've used it as a resource and inspiration and gone forward with it. So eliminating waste in the future is definitely on our agenda. So we can look at different ways, what's there already and what's coming down the line. So fabric, this is really exciting, where it started, understanding how things were made, so how when we go forward. So here's an advert from Leave Overalls. You know, they would have done things like, yes, denim. They would have done 2-in-1s, moving to 3-in-1s later. They would have done canvas weave, so really heavy duty fabrics fit for purpose. So yes, we looked at minor jeans, but this is things like the overalls, you know, they need to wear every day. They need to be hard wearing, not rip, and then just wash and reuse and reuse. So it was designed to last back in the day. And this middle one, you know, beauty of imperfection, because it's so beautiful the way the seams twist. And that is due to how the fabric's been made. So we look at, you know, the short illustration on a Z twill. So it goes from top right to bottom left. The yellow arrow goes down. That's the way the fabric is skewing. So as you wear it and wash it, it starts to skew. So the outer seam comes in on the right leg as we look at it, and then the left leg as we look at it, the inseam comes out. So you get this beautiful idea, and that inspiration from there, you can think, oh, brilliant, twisted jeans, engineered jeans, you know, maybe that's where some of the ideas come from. But also in fabrics back in the day, we would have used things like this as a leaf, that where indigo pigments say inside, we need to get it out. And this is me at home actually trying and testing. And then vegetable dye. So back in the day, everything we used natural. We would have grown it. There wasn't such thing as synthetic. Then we moved to today. It's not all doom and gloom, but we do need to recognize a lot of the dyes on the left, you see, are made from oil. So oil-based dyes is a huge amount of the market. Nearly all indigos is oil-based. Hopefully we move away from that going forward, because I see the future coming that way a bit. Natural inputs, here's some Achroma earth colors next to it. So here we're using natural inputs as byproducts actually. So there is hope here. This can grow into something bigger and better. And then looking at the fibers that we use. So here's BCI cotton. It's a great start. It's starting to look at how cotton's grown and the degrees of how you can look and look at how it works. But it's only the start. We need to really look at how we going forward. So when you move into, you know, organic and things like that, there's a lot more you need to do and tick a lot more boxes. But it's definitely a good start. And then I considered choices, I'd say here. So this is Tencel and Refibre at the bottom, actually. So looking, a lot of people, when, you know, talks about outside the circuit, don't realize it comes from trees. So actually having a forest that is actually looked after and then replanted in sequence to being harvested. So actually it keeps it into the cycle. Considering choices like this above other things that have come from synthetics or other resources that aren't good. And then here, shredding, using shredded material to make a fiber at the end of it. In the synthetic world, we do have things like Reprieve, which you have to commend that they're using plastic bottles and then making them into yarns. So actually they're trying to find solutions, but we do have to dig deep and ask a lot of questions that, you know, taking bottles from another industry into our industry, is that really our solution, or is this a stopgap? Because if we take their bottles and then they need to recycle bottles, they're just going to make new bottles. So in the world. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's definitely a step forward. And then, yeah, plastic waste. So really think about how much plastic we have to use at this stage. I believe we have to transition out. We can't jump, but let's see, because durability comes with synthetic fibres. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix between in here. So the future. So using waste as a resource, I see. So here's a few examples here. They've actually got some pockets, quite hard to see actually, but they've felted all the fabric back together, which is a really great creative use. And you can actually see the denim panels in the actual fabric. So making a sofa or something, it looks amazing. Maybe not, it's too heavy for garments, but it's a great idea. Using indigo bacteria to grow indigo is a great future thinking idea that hopefully we can scale in the not too short future. Leftover milk as well, proteins, things that are left over. What is there available? You know, garments, like old polyester garments. Here's a good example, text to text, where they're taking old polyester garments. They're either doing mechanical, chemical, thermo recycling to break it back down and then make it back into yarn and then make it back into fabric and back into a garment and then closing that loop. If we can get better at that, then yeah, it's going to be a greater future. Here's Renewcell, which we heard about this week. I see this as a future. You know, this avenue is the cellulosic waste. There's a lot of other cellulosic waste that we don't think about, banana leaves and other things that potentially in the future we can put into make fibers from. Here's great. This is more of an illustration. I love like the idea of having all this fruit, this food crops chucked in the top, like pineapple leaves or a bit of this and a bit of that. There's less cellulosic waste in these fibers compared to cotton, hemp, and the bast fibers, but there still is. So we can get to it, which is a hard process. Then we can get some amazing kind of fibers out of it, and then if you can get biochemistry after it as well, again, that's amazing. So you're actually using everything. So this led me on to researching more into the future and how we can interlink everything. So this is an eco park. I started my research into, it was one in Denmark, but this is one in Korea, where actually it's a power plant. Everything that's a waste goes to another unit, and then it gets reused to make more energy or other products, and then gets put back or puts back into another system. So if we kind of do a grayscale across here and imagine the future and what the future could look like, we need cotton to put into yarns, and then the yarns need to be put into fabrics, or from yarns you do get scraps or waste, so we say. So scraps becomes another avenue of this, and the fabric, as we know, goes into garments, and you make garments. So that's where we normally go to. But if we took a step forward and thought about after garments, what is there? So there's potentially, you could have some yarn, waste that yarns could use. You could have waste that maybe you could recycle into recycle yarns or recycle fabrics. And then as you go on from there, you're thinking about, okay, so then the scraps could be then sent back to fabric, back to yarn, or even to another part of the industry. So things like wadding. So this could be wadding for houses, bedding, even wadded jackets, for instance. A denim wadded jacket made out of denim fiber would be amazing. So then that could potentially go back into the garment industry. And then actually, I'm trying to kind of give you an idea. I'm just doing all the scribbles, but if you could close that loop and then everyone uses a bit of the waste, then it could be an amazing future, I'd say. And then washing is the third section I'll talk about. So in the past, this is the jean that I showed that sold for $87,000 that was found recently from the 1800s. It's amazing. It's got amazing detailing, washing, tints, even the droplets of wax where you would have held the candle, the rips, the positions. But this is done from raw, so it's not pre-faded. Back then, there was no pre-fading before, I'd say, the 70s. And then when we move on, this is where we kind of are today. You'd buy a pair of raw jeans. This is nudie, great example. In 4 months, potentially your jean would look a bit like this. And then once it's broken in and you wash it, you're taking off the first layer of indigo. And then you've started to make your own mark. So it's the natural way of breaking in denim to get that look. Outside of that, the options were to try and do it yourself. And this is what the personalization side was. So if you think about the punks or the rockers, they had to do this because it wasn't available, but it was a nice expressive way of creating your own style. So they've splattered, I would have guessed it would probably be something like toilet bleach they would have used to get the pure whites. They might have, used water with the toilet bleach the color down, and then they'd draw on it and stuff like that, and make a really amazing, washes and wash looks that we take inspiration from today. And then in the past, before laundries, what I mean is before denim laundries, there were laundries. there was laundries. These books are both from the 1930s that I read. They're from laundries from the 30s where they'd use, to be honest, the same bleaches that we use today in denim and a lot of similar processes. But back then, the books were written really calculated, really easy to explain, and there's a lot more information and it's a lot easier to understand. So I've actually recently gone back to try and get more information of how things were done, see if we can then influence the future and then present today. So give you an example, we want to buy better, we want to launder less. This is a jean that's from Ask. So it's got organic cotton, degradable elastane, great fabric from Italy, organic cotton, and then recycled metal, which is amazing. Everything in there is amazing. The jean is quite a simple wash, but it's got all the credentials to make a nice, sustainable jean. But what happens if we want to do something like this, a bit more processed, a bit more high and lows? Either you can do something like this with Redone, where you get vintage and you'd remake it. But then what happens, things like here, Diesel's Catwalk. If you want to do something like this in a responsible way, today, I'd say things like bleaching is done like this, predominantly across the board, which is PP spray, which is a bleach. Then if you wanted to do something like that, you'd potentially then see on the image I just loaded, on the right-hand side would be where it's gone pink and it changes to a brownie shade after it does its work and oxidizes. Then they tumble it in bleach again and then oxidize it. So then once that washes out, you're going to get this really bleached out look, which is similar to this kind of diesel wash. And then stone's still in use. So we need to think about what this is today, what we've got, but what can the future look like? What are the options? If I don't want this, what are they? But there are great things around still, like here, the laser. The laser can do great patterning. It can do markings. It can do logos. It can do everything. So there are some great resources. We just need to ask the questions and then use them, really. So then the future. I think the future is about reducing the need for resources. So things like here, this was in Blue Matters in Turkey, where they got a laser where they can do everything in one go, which is amazing. Do one-off jean, you do all the detailing, all the whiskering, all the blasting, everything, and you sew it up and you literally enzyme wash it and you're kind of done, which is great. But then production's slightly different to that, but it's a good idea for the future, I'd say. And then 3D design that we talked about. Can we design in 3D before then we go into the laundry? And then once we've got our final look, then we need to do it in a responsible way. We need to look at laundry applications that are saving water, using less chemistry, using things that don't harm the environment, and also using it back and recycling your water. Or another way to think about it is printing denim. I don't think this is mass going forward, but I think this is a great idea. Like this top is amazing. Like there isn't a pocket on this jacket or shirt, and there isn't a top seam. It's flat, but because they've printed it in so much detail, they've obviously had to wash the garment to photograph it first. It looks really cool. So I think there's a small place in the range for going forward, but yeah, that's quite a nice idea for the future as well. Okay, so this is after giving you all the ideas. I'd say be inspired to take on your own research. So things like what happens as denim decomposes. I showed you earlier, this is a jean I planted for 12 months. I dug it up every 4 weeks to check how it was degrading, and then documented the whole process because I wanted to learn for myself in a rural environment. If I chuck my jean in the garden, what happens? Because sometimes they might say it takes 9 weeks and it'll disappear, but this is 12 months and there's still bits left, and it's 100% cotton. So in theory, it should have gone. How strong is the sun? Could it discharge denim? Again, this is 6 months on a goat shed, tied down with ropes to see what it could do. Could we harness that to the future? Could the laundry in the future not need water? Could we use light as a source? It's there, it's free. How could we harness it? And then what are the forgotten fibres? So this is me on a course looking at bast fibres, but the bast fibre is nettle. Nettle is, we class as a weed in Europe, definitely in the UK. And it's the same as things like hemp, linen, different to linen, but the same family. Marijuana is the same thing as well, but the bast fibre is in the middle, and you can get to it. In World War II, the Germans made all their shirts out of nettle fibres. So it's readily available. So could that be something else that we've forgotten that we need to relook at from the past? And then invest in primary research for sure. So what's the best way of learning to dye? just do it yourself. So here's me. I went on a natural dyes course, and also with my kids, I got a indigo pack, got a vat going, and we just dyed things. We tied Lego bricks in, dyed them, did shibori bits and pieces. Got to understand how many dips and appreciate indigo and the amount of levels you've got to get to make it super dark. And the best way to learn denim design, as you know, probably university, but this is me outside of the universities, going on a course that denim history run. So yeah, great, idea and good to do. Okay, I'm just going to quickly wrap up. This is some further research. As you can see, my research is quite wide. So I look at things like zero waste, biomimicry in designers, I believe is the future. Look into nature's for the solutions of the future. Here, mauve, this is where the original dye was invented, before indigo dyes actually. And then this denim manual is amazing to keep, I would say. And then some of the historic stuff I've got, and a bit more research to go with. I'm just conscious I don't want to run over. And then, I'd say let's finish with research well to design better. And thank you.
Thanks, Rowan. That's a very interesting journey you bring us. And I keep remembering future is by reducing, which will be quite a good mojo for the next years. Remember, everyone, you can still drop some questions to run in the Q&A. We have some times, and I will be the first one to ask questions about it. That the Transformer edition is all about students. We have many students today with us. So what are your key advice for the young future designers and professionals of denim to get inspired on a regular basis on design better?
I think where I started with the Instagram is looking at a lot of different resources and a lot of different avenues, and have somewhere to document it, because you get some days when you're uninspired, and everyone gets them. So if you can go back and look at something and then get inspired to then go on and create and come up with more ideas, it's actually a good resource. Instagram, I'd say, for saving my data down, but it just gives me avenues, and then generally I'll find something and that'll lead on to something, and then I'll research into this mauve dye, and then that will lead on to other things in laundry, for instance. So I'd say, if that answers the question.
I think so. That's still it's very personal, but I guess that's interesting also. We have a question from Lily. Hi, Lily. Again, thanks to be here today. Hello, can you explain more precisely the concept about printed wash? Interesting that you show it.
Yeah, so
you can the framework, the pictures of the printed, because maybe, and zoom in, because I think it was very nicely done.
Oh, shall I show it back? Oh, let me put my presentation back up then. And get to the page. I'll get to the page now. I went to the shops actually yesterday just to see what was going on, and I'm seeing more of the printed coming forward as well in more of the top end brands. And you can do it on any fiber as well. So printed is just, sorry, I'm getting to it. I've got loads of button pushers. Okay. I share my screen again. So when we say printed wash, it's not a wash at all. It's just, you can do all of it on Photoshop, and then you print onto any fiber you want. So I'm seeing a lot of people like Rag & Bone are using viscose, like joggers. Yesterday I saw like a dungaree, it must have been made of viscose, and they printed on a full jumpsuit in black, fully washed out and everything, and then just printed it all. So it's the look of denim, but it's super comfortable. This, I think, is similar because how it hangs, it's not heavy duty denim that it would have been. But this is, where I'd see on the printed denim side, it's quite a cool idea. People like Our Legacy did some really good ideas where they twisted the seams in, which I talked about earlier, printed it on. So actually the side seam's in the same position, but actually because it's printed, it looks like it twists, which is quite a cool way of utilizing the new innovations, I'd say, going forwards.
And as we can see, denim is a lot about detailed shades and very going into the very deep look. So maybe not always easy to see for let's say regular people, more or less, not denim head like you, but still very interesting to see and goes. We have another question regarding still the print, printed. So before the print, it's white without dye. No, it's printed from it's dyed, and the print is made at the end. So when we see the The process is it's really after every wash and so on. So you can either do it on let's say raw denim or already washed out more or less, and then you add the print at the last step.
But there's no indigo involved. It's the only sense of denim you could call it is it's a 3x1 twill, but it'll be a white or ecru and then fully printed on the top.
You have many ways to do it. Yeah, including the blue color or that many things to do. And easy also in terms of production. So also change the way of doing it. So
it's super sustainable because you're using a print, and anything you print on is what you use, and the rest of it is still in the cartridge ready for the next garment.
After it may not fade out the same way.
No, it's not. It's not. You can't expect everything in one.
Yeah, it's never know. So yeah, more or less, but yes, doesn't have the beauty of fading and aging.
We'll have to get Dystar to design the cartridges to print.
Yes, exactly. So that was the questions more or less we had. See what we got next. I don't think we have. No, we don't have new question on this. That was very interesting again on this one. So thanks a lot.